Hey guys, over here for our Buying a House in Japan playlist. At the front of the old Japanese farmhouse. Some of you might have seen a job we did recently up on that roof, up above that roof up there, which led to this. Have a look at this post here. Fairly rough tree style post. Now the practical people in the house think that should be replaced with a post, but the more artistic people appreciate the beauty of it and want to keep it. And it is still structurally sound, although it looks dodgy. So obviously it needs a bit of attention. That post is a little bit more square and easy to work with, but also needs a bit of attention too. So time to break out some sandpaper. That rope's used to hang up futon and things, so get rid of that. The camera's sitting up on a rail. This is what Japanese people usually use to hang up their washing. Seemed to be a good place to put the camera. Turns out it wasn't. We'll get off there in a second. So sanding that tree, right? Sanding a tree is not an easy thing to do, as you can imagine. Really fiddly. Have to try and get in between all the gaps and everything. So very, very fiddly. There's still little branches on it and all sorts of stuff. So interesting, the old farmhouse has lots of posts like this, and up in the roof too. We've showed you before, up inside the roof, there's some huge trees up in there, and they sort of leave them their natural shape. And it's interesting because it does seem to make them stronger, because you haven't cut across the grain. They do seem to be much stronger. You know, if you took a piece like that and squared it up, you'd be cutting across the grain all over the place, wouldn't you, and it'd weaken it. But when you leave it in its original form like that, it does seem to make them stronger. That's surprisingly strong, that skinny tree. So after a long time, probably a couple of hours, probably, because it was sort of flaky, but also it had, on the north side, it had mold on it. So I had to get rid of that. You can see how tricky it is, fiddly. A little bit more to go at the top there. Be much easier to replace it with a square post. It is a nice thing, isn't it? Natural shape, natural form. So at the bottom there's a couple of metal brackets that are a little bit rusty. So I broke out the battery drill with a wire brush. Take off the rust. Also took the opportunity to use that wire brush on a couple of difficult spots on the tree. So not bad weather for a project like this. It's autumn, still been warm, about 29, 30 some days. Now that one was much easier. Sanding block, rub, rub, rub. Interesting though, the bottom's really square, but it thins out towards the top, and it still does have its natural tree shape towards the top, and even a little branch up there. Let's go up and have a look. So the bottom's pretty square, see? But when you get up the top here, see the edges are sort of round? That's the natural roundness. There's a knot there. See, a little branch there. And that's more the natural shape at the top, isn't it? It's sort of rounded. So you see that a lot in the old houses. So they like the shape of it, and they also, obviously, the strength. It makes it stronger if it's its natural, pretty much its natural shape. So some rust inhibiting paint for those metal brackets. Not a very flattering angle of the fat man, is it? Sorry about that. Unskilled labourer needs to get some get some more modest clothing happening, I think. That's pretty bad. Cover it up. Hide that away. Fiddly job, that little tree. So again, it's a free job. So there's a mosquito can that the mosquito coils come in, which is excellent for paint because it's got a handle. It's just the right size. It's really good. And we had 8 litres of that brown paint because we buy it in bulk because that's the stuff we use the most of around the house. And it looks like there's lots of painting jobs coming, guys, because it's been 10 years since we painted the house. So there's a few places that need attention. So those of you who are into these painting videos, those 3 people that are into the painting videos, there's lots more coming because there's lots more to do. As you'll see shortly, what happens too is the plan was originally just to do this tree, right? Let's fix the tree because it's looking dodgy and we don't want it to rot away and then we have to replace it. So let's do something with the tree. Always much better spend a couple of hours and put some paint on something like this is much easier than have the thing break down and have to fix it and replace it. However, what happens is, okay, we're going to do that tree. Oh, well, we'll do the other post too. Okay, I'll do that too. Oh, that beam at the top looks a bit dodgy. Oh, yeah, better do something with that. And then that piece of sort of fascia you can see at the far end of the roof there, that actually goes out into the weather. And that was looking a bit tight as well. And that's a dodgy one. If that one rots, then we lose the integrity of the roof. So I better do that too. That's what happens. That's what happens in an old place. As you fix one bit or make one bit sort of better and stronger, then you notice the adjoining bit looks more dodgy then, and one thing leads to another. It never ends. So those beams at the end too, we've got lots of those around the old house, those beams that stick out into the weather, and they're really vulnerable because it's end grain, isn't it? And end grain getting rain and sun and so on, it rots away really quickly. We see all these things on the other old houses around the neighbourhood. The people that don't maintain these old houses, we see what happens. And that's what gets our attention and makes us try a bit harder, because these places are great when they're well maintained, but if you let them go, they fall apart really quickly. So yeah, that's the box that the Armado is in, the storm shutters. We don't use the storm shutters anymore, but the box is now just part of the house, isn't it? The fascia of the house, the face of the house. So that's looking a bit sad. So this wall here gets the sun almost all day. So I have to do something with that now. Yeah, it just goes on and on, doesn't it? So we call this project the Tree Project because that's what it was supposed to be, but as you can see, it's expanded beyond that, hasn't it? So eventually gave the tree 2 coats. And then this bottom bit that runs along the bottom here, it's a bit hard to see, isn't it? The dark brown in the shade there is a bit hard to see, isn't it? But it's sort of softwood across the bottom there, thin softwood. And again, it gets the sun a lot. So it's early in the morning now, but soon that sun's going to get up onto there. So you see across the bottom there near the legs, that stuff's pretty thin. And it sort of cracks really easily and dries out. This wood is super dry. All of the wood is super dry. Hey, that's normal speed, by the way. See how suddenly the old guy, the old unskilled labourer, has gone really slowly now? That's his normal pace. When it's not sped up 12 times, and he's trying to do a straight line down between the wood and the metal of the window frame. So another coat on that end there. So the bits that are exposed to the weather, those end bits, and the tree and the other post there got 2 coats. The rest of it just got 1. So yeah, that beam across the top. This wood was so dry, it was amazing. Loaded up the paintbrush from that tin with a heavy amount of paint, and it just disappeared into the wood. It's just so dry, so thirsty. So that's what it looks like. It does look better. It does look better. Obviously, this is where the washing's hung. It sort of is the front of the house, but it's off to one side, so we don't normally go there. It's normally just where we hang up the washing. So nobody really notices, a lot of these jobs, but it's not really for that. It's mainly for the preservation, to keep the house in good condition. Because if we stop doing these things, it wouldn't be long before things would be falling down, you know. And as we've seen from other old houses in the neighbourhood, when little things start falling off, then big bits start falling off and things start collapsing. We'll show you again soon the old house on the other side of our neighbour's house on the other side. That we showed you once a hole in the roof, and recently there was a lot of banging coming from out there, and we thought they were demolishing the house, and we went out there and the house was demolishing itself. The water had got into the roof, and it makes the mud in the roof heavy, and then the wood rots, and then it collapses, and then the next bit gets wet, and then the wood rots, and then it collapses, and a huge piece of the roof had collapsed, and tiles were sliding off into a big pile, all on its own. There was no one there. Big racket coming from there, and it was just the house falling in on itself. So we don't want that to happen, so that's why we did that. Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.